Alright, I'm at the next step in my project, and it's going to be wiring up electric fans to the stock computer inputs, outputs, whatever puts. So this is a two-fan shroud thing dealio from a Cadillac CTS, and I chose this because it basically fits my radiator perfect, and it's got a high and a low speed fan, and they both run off 30 amps, so they're easy to wire up. And the second thing you're going to need, I got a little fuse block with the pieces, two relays, two relay wiring pigtails, and a couple tools. So I'll show you how I'm going to wire this up. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is draw up our wiring diagram. I'll show you the simple way to do this. So these relays I got were marked, and these are pretty standard for the style relay. So you've got two circuits in this. You have your control circuit, which is 86 and 85. One needs to be power, one needs to be ground, and then it'll energize. Your other circuit is your, call it our main power that comes in. So 30 is the incoming power. And then when this is at rest, 87A is hot, which we don't want. When this circuit energizes, then this little switch will flip over to 87, and 87 will be hot. So this is going to be how we're going to draw this up. And on the back of some of these, they even have the numbers. So it's fairly idiot-proof. So what we're going to do, this is our relay. This is our fuse. So power is going to come into the fuse, from the fuse to our relay, which connects to pin 30. Then pin 87 would be our outgoing power to our fan. That's our little fan blade right there. Then we have 85 over here and 86. So 85 will be connected to a positive 12 volt source. Because the way these computers work for the Gen 3 computers is the pin on the computer is a grounding pin. So that'll be our ground. So blue 41, which is the pin number, is fan 1, and red 33 is fan 2. And of course these are two separate relays. You don't connect both of them to one relay. So that's how we're going to be wiring this up. So the first thing I'm going to do is wire up our power to our fuse, and our fuse to our relays. And both of those are going to be identical with two separate fuses. So this is my pile of wires. So this wire I'm going to be using for the main power coming in. You got to remember both of these are 30 amp fans. I checked it on the vehicle at the junkyard when I pulled them. So I'm going to have basically 60 amps. So I'm using this guy. Pretty sure this is like an 8 gauge. It's from something off a car. If you want some good wiring, used OEM wiring is usually pretty good. You can get a whole harness for like 30 bucks at the junkyard. So this one's going to connect to my power. It's even got a fused link in it. And this other end is going to connect to a fuse block. So here's the block. This is how they come. Alright, got my wire stripped. And like I said, this is my incoming fuse. So if you need the right tool for these, it's a Molex crimper. This is just whatever brand. They've got like these little teeth thingies that do a factory type crimp. Now it's usually strong enough with just the crimp, but I like to throw solder on them too because it's not going to hurt anything. Alright, so there we have our hot side coming in. We can put this into our fuse block. And these usually only go in one way and they snap in. So line all those guys up, push them in until they snap, and there's our hot side coming in. So now we need 2 powers coming out, 1 to each fan. This is going to be my far fan, we'll call it, which I believe is fan 2. Alright, so that's crimped and soldered. And you just choose whichever one you want. Let's stick it in the first one over here. So that one's all set. This is going to the... Alright, so the next step is to run the power from the fuse block to the relay. So here's our first relay. If you look on these, 30 is our incoming power, and it's sticking straight up and down, if that makes sense. So it's this bottom connector right here. So there's a way to disassemble these, but we're just going to use this one. That's our blue wire, pre-stripped. Got our connector for the fuse block. Same thing as before, just crimp it. And that one's all set. We'll go ahead and do the other one real quick, same way. Blue wire to fuse block connector. Alright, so now we got both of those crimped and soldered on for our fuse coming in. So on these, 87A is the one that we don't need, which is the center one. So we're going to remove it. And this is a Delphi tool. And I don't think you're going to be able to read the part number there. 12094430. There's a couple different versions of these. This one's the wider one. So you slide these in. Hits the little tab, and then we can pull the wire right out. And that's how you depin these. And then we're also going to be removing 87, which is where we're sending our power to, and that's this yellow wire up here. The reason we're doing that is I don't want to have a splice. I want to use the original pin, and they don't come with extras. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this one out, then take our needle nose. We're going to bend back these 2 tabs, and then we're going to break these wires. Okay, so this is going to be the power going to our fan. So here's our reclaimed connector and our fan power wire. So I'm going to crimp this sort of back on. And I know this isn't the right way to do it. You should buy a bag of these, but with this Chinese stuff, you never know which part number to get. And this works just as good. So I've got that half-ass crimped on there, and now we're going to solder it on. Alright, so I've got that soldered together, and you can pull on this thing as hard as you want. It is not coming apart, so yeah, it's ugly. Yeah, it's not the right way to do it, but it definitely works. So, then like I said, this is power going to the fan. So we go back to our relay pigtail, and we're going to stick it back in spot 87. Alright, so I stuck that back in spot 87. So now we've got blue power coming in, red going out. Now we need our signal wires. So we're going to be using the PCM wires. So we're going to do the same thing, because again, I don't want to splice. So I'm going to pull one of these wires out, pull the connector off, crimp and solder it onto a pin wire going to the computer, same as I just did with the power. So again, it's on there super tight, not coming apart with normal operation. So this is our wire going to pin blue 41, which will be our fan 1. So we'll come over here and put it back in our spot. And then that's our ground. So this black will be our power. And I'm going to run both of these to one of the fuses on the fuse block that we're wiring up. That way I've got only one power wire coming to the whole system, and everything's going to be connected to that. So now I'll do the fan 2 relay the exact same way. Incoming power, fan power, negative trigger wire to the PCM. Alright, so I got both my relay connectors all wired up the same. Green for fan 2, blue for fan 1. So basically these guys are gonna hang out together. So I need to, for my trigger wires, like I said, PCM is the ground. So these two black wires are going to be my hot wires for the solenoid. So I'm just going to tie these together and put them into the same fuse block. Easy as that. Now both of these will go to one fuse, which we can do. So fuse block, incoming power. One of these guys will be our hot for our relays. And these things even clip onto the side of here. We can slide them on. Then these blue wires are the fan power wires. So now we've got relay power, fan, fan. And we'll clean all this up when we go to put it on the car. So the next step is to connect this wire to one fan and this wire to the other fan. So these are going to be our fan power wires right here. So we'll do that. Okay, now my fuse block relay center is done. Now we'll go on to the fans. So again, with the fans, I don't want to splice into these wires. I can, but it's just one more thing to fail, and it usually looks kind of ugly. So So when I got these fans, I cut the wires off so I'd have these factory connectors, and I'm going to do the same thing that I just did with the relays, where I'm going to de-pin them, basically cut the wire off, crimp it, solder it, and then I'll have a factory-ish looking connection. And one thing I did before all this was I tested to see which was negative, which was positive. And on this one, black is negative, blue is positive. So I'll know how to wire it up. So we'll go ahead and do the positive first. I'm not sure what kind of connector this is, so I've never de-pinned one, but sometimes this one looks like it's got a clip. There's usually a piece like this that comes off first, kind of holds the pins in. Okay. Alright, so I got that popped out. And then I'll take out the positive end. There's usually a little retention tab down in here. And it slides out like that. So now we'll recreate this onto my positive wire. Alright, and here we are all soldered on. Again, that is not going anywhere. If you have any concerns, just let it cool down. Give it a pretty good tug test, and that's not coming out. Alright, so that's the positive done. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in just so don't mix them up, and I definitely forgot to put my weather tight connector on. Fuck. And we'll do the negative one. And there we go, positive done, negative's done. Go ahead and put the little retainer clip back in. And there we go. Basically we have a factory connection, except for where I forgot to put the weather packs back in. So I'll have to silicone those when I'm done. Hopefully I'll remember on the next fan. So that fan's done. Now I'll do the next one. Okay, so I just went and connected both my fan grounds together, put an eyelet on them, crimped, soldered, so that'll be my ground for my fans. So we're gonna add some fuses. So my first one was just to the relays, so it's a 10 amp. Other two are fans, 30 amp, 30 amp. Toss our relays in here. All right, so we got our fuses in, relays in. So now we're gonna connect this and we're gonna bench test it with a battery charger. before I tape it up and loom it up and make it look all nice. Alright, so this is my main power. Like that. There's my ground. Connect that. And the way to test this is going to be to use the two computer pin wires, touch them to ground, and we should fire up the fans. So here is blue. I'm not sure which one this one is. We'll find out. It helps if you plug in your battery charger. Alright, so we'll test the first fan. And nothing. Alright, so that fan works, and it's going the right direction. And we're going the right direction on that one also. So that's it, harness works. I'll clean this up, get it installed on the car, and that is it. Simplest, easiest way to wire up dual fans, or even if you just use a single fan. Everything's the same, you just have one wire instead of two. And here's one final shot of the harness. So I got it plugged into the fans, and it's gonna mount sort of over here on the car. This is my ground, this is my power, and then in here is the two wires that are gonna trigger off the PCM. And that is it. That's as simple as it is. Bye.